Good morning, and good morning, Jeff. Happy Valentine's Day to you. Be my Valentine. I love you, man. I love you. Um, let's see. Better cues, please. I've got some great ones today. Better cues, and we're not even going to get to answers exactly, but we'll come at them. Already good enough A's. That's right. Hello, everybody. It's not just Jeff. Jeff is just the apple polisher of our group. It's delightful to have you here. And I've decided, since it's Valentine's Day, we can hold a symposium. What is a symposium? It originally meant guys sitting around drinking wine and talking about the nature of love. So Plato's symposium is basically these guys sitting around talking about the nature of love. And boy, do I have a lot to say about that. And I have to admit, some of it is answers, though all of it is tentative answers. One of the answers that I will stand firmly with, I bet for a long time, is that love is not the answer, it's the question. What to love, how to love them, what aspect of things to love. If you love someone, what parts of them do you love? How does that migrate over time? What is love is a question that pretentiously and yet audaciously, I think I can answer. And that's one of the values I take from the work I do with Terrence Deacon on the origins of life, because I actually find the origins of it, I wouldn't call it love, in the integration that makes possible life in the first place. So, I have so much to say on this subject, but don't let me get started without me reminding you that I would love your questions, comments, answers, all of that. Love is Blind show is a great study in dangers of blind optimism. Yes, I wrote this week. The urge to splurge and surge to merge is dangerous. Uniting with things should come with bigger warning signs, and that would be certainly true of movements as well as marriages and any kind of partnership. I guess I should disclose that I love a lot, but I no longer trust romantic love in anything but fiction. I sing in jazz bands and I sing all those songs with great conviction, but I know that they're romantic. And what's my definition of romantic? It's a human thing. Romance is a human thing. It's the dream of happily ever after that lives in all of us and cannot be met by reality. So I consider that kind of the heart of the tragic comic situation that is the human condition, is that I can't help but dream of happily ever after. I'm a human being, which means I live in two worlds. I live in the real physical world like other critters, but I also live in the world of my imagination. One of the things that imagination makes possible is the concept of infinity, or infinity applied to things like infinite knowledge, like being a know-it-all, or infinite love. I hadn't thought of this before, but all of God's or Trump's traits are variations on infinity. If you think of God as omnipotent, omnificent, omniscient, and there's not a great word for this. There ought to be. It's for the oneness. It's his perfect integrity. All of those are taken to the max in our idealization of God, and all of them are taken to the max in anybody playing God the way Trump does. So he considers himself all powerful, infinitely powerful, infinitely good, which means infinitely loving, infinitely wise, and infinitely integrated. The connection I would make here is that philosophers and theologians have asked for centuries whether God could create a mountain so big he couldn't move it, or could he create a puzzle so hard he couldn't solve it. And the general answer you get from theologians is he wouldn't, because he's got infinite oneness. He never is inconsistent. That's an idealization. That's a romantic idealization. So it's interesting to watch how these days, in the touchy 2020s, I'm seeing, at least in my feed, less of the kind of smoochy, cupcaking, wifing it, romantic stuff than I used to see. I think these are time when we are sobering up a bit about love. Um, the Trumpists love Trump. The Trumpists love each other. I do not see the left or progressives as more loving than Trumpists any more than I see them more hopeful than Trumpists. These are just terms that need to be worked out. But what does it mean? It means a kind of addiction. Frankly, I think that love is the operational definition for love and the operational definition for addiction are the same. I've looked for differences and I don't see them. The only difference is whether you think it will turn out well. So what is my operational definition for either of them? Really important as a grounding for my work. It's doing dedicated work to maintain something that someone depends upon. So what does that mean? Remember that my approach is to think about how we limit what happens. That, for example, a living being is not something, life is not something added to chemistry and physics. It is a way in which chemistry and physics can constrain themselves into processes that maintain themselves. So, as I've said before, as I've confessed many times, I love myself quite a bit, in that I am really struggling to keep on existing. What am I? I'm actually a constraint that channels energy into work that maintains the constraint I am. So that work is effort. I take in energy. I just had some ginger cookies, um, and that energy could be used for all sorts of things. I constrain it. Okay, so what do I mean by dedicated work to maintain something I depend upon? The dedicated work is of all the things I could do, let's say for my partner to make it as intuitive as possible, or for my children, of all the things I could do, I constrain myself to the effort that is likely to perpetuate what? My access to them. Because if I didn't have access to them, or if they didn't continue to exist, at least I'd say that, then I would suddenly be not half the man I used to be. That is, I have become partial to someone who I love. I depend on them. You listen to any of the love songs, they've got this in there. Um, I would be nothing without you, or I depend on you. And it's a really interesting tension because that can get a little creepy feeling. I once had a student when I was I was teaching psychology in an art college, and I had this student who was actually making it in R&B. And he and I noticed that there were no ironic R&B songs, and so he wrote one. It was a masterpiece, and he got one of his women singers to sing it, and she was kind of puzzled by it because it's a song that basically said, "Please don't go. We'll eat you up. We love you so." As is that line from "Where the Wild Things Are." That is, "I need you so much. I can't live without you. If you leave me, I'll die." It's a kind of a romantic blackmail. So it can be treacherous. Uh, it can be treacherous, and it's the same definition as addiction. For me, it's the same definition. The only difference is prognosis. If I think that your dedicated work to maintain something you depend upon existing is not going to turn out well, I'm going to call it an addiction. You probably know what that's like to have either been told that you're addicted to a partner or that you're addicted to something that someone thinks just won't end well. I certainly have had that. I remember when I first started dating this, she was a model. And one of my friends, she was a model who had turned into a hairstylist, but was still modeling some. It was fantastic. But one of my friends said, "This is not going to end well." And sure enough, it didn't end well. And it took me quite a time to recover from it. But anyway, I'm glad I had that roller coaster ride. That was fun in its own weird, distracting, distorting way. There was a time after it was over when I had calculated that I had spent 2.5% of my remaining life expectancy wasting and pining for her, even though I'd asked her to leave. But she went off right away to someone who was richer and more powerful than me, and that hurt my feelings. Hurting my feelings is a big part of love, and I think it's a part we don't pay much attention to. You might remember this from things I've said in the past. You know, the fortune cookie thing where you add in bed at the end of a fortune cookie, and it's usually delightful. Well, I'm suggesting the same for For me, I think that love is way more than we are willing to admit, an attempt at self-confidence through support, all the way out to treating a partner like a prop that's propping you up. Um, I wouldn't put it past me. I know that that was certainly true. You remember that I'm paying a lot of attention to mojonomics, how we love or get addicted to something that enables us. I hadn't thought of this before either. Maintain something that we depend upon, self-confidence. That's going to be interesting. I'll probably write it up as a minor motion picture this week. My motion pictures are um, getting fewer views, and part of it might be that I suck. That's always a possibility. But part of it might also be that I'm kind of buzzkill. But anyway, that's the fascinating part for me. When people say I love you, it's often a question: do you love me? And there was a partnership in which, by the end of my partnership, this was the last one I had. It was about 11 years ago. Um, we tried for a while to distinguish between flove and pluv. Flove was the feeling of love, that welling up of feeling, and pluv was the promise or pledge of love. Um, because you can't maintain that feeling all the time. You think you can when you first have it. It's so damn convincing. Um, there is something, yeah, the infinite is deeply tied to romance and swooning and all of that. Um, to fall in love with someone young will often have a kind of optical illusion about it, which is the sense that the other person is going to stay young forever, um, which is a little bit like assuming that a banana will stay fresh for millennia. It's just not how it works. I did ask on Facebook the other day, I asked, has there ever been a man who wooed a woman by somehow demonstrating that he would love her even after her looks faded? And the responses were fascinating. A lot of women came on and scolded me, which was part of my answer. And by the way, you could answer. I don't think I'm doing this around gender. I could talk about gender. I have deep concerns about the perils that women are in these days, um, around this stuff, just given our histories, cultural and natural, hormonal, all of that. Um, I I worry for them a lot, but just to give you an illustration, I love this line from Philip Larkin, my favorite poet, who says he married her to keep her from getting away. Now she's there all day. Well, I don't actually think of that as gendered. It's just as easy to say she married him to keep him from getting away. Now he's there all day. That's one of the challenges, is that you feel this urge to splurge, to merge, and then you are, and during the love phase, the whole thrill is that it keeps on getting more and more intimate until you're smacked right up against each other's faces, living in whatever cabin fever home you've got. And if you've pledged a life together, that's a lot of, he's there all day, she's there all day. So anyway, where was I going with this? Um, so so just so let me just go back out, zoom back out to my definition of love and talk about how it comes about and how it's, from my perspective, the missing half of evolutionary theory. Evolutionary theory is considered to be mostly natural selection. That is, there's random chance mutations and some of them die out. But there's a fundamental problem in evolutionary biology, which is how would you ever get any generation of new things? I mean, everything should fall towards the more simple. Natural selection is really not a force in the world. It's not some being like God picking Noah. It's not like that. It's not actually selection at all. It's a complete distraction that we called it selection. It's just the non-survival of the unfit, those that are not able to maintain their integrity. So we're talking here about integrity. How would you ever get integrity in the first place? And in general, my approach is falling up, very much tied to love. But let me just see if I can give you a sense of this. Then I'll make it as personal as possible. So you get, so, I mean, we've talked about this before as something that you can play out in just deep genetics. Um, Terry and I are now applying this same logic to trying to understand how you go from the first universal common ancestor to the last, or Luca, which has not been figured out and can't be figured out with natural selection alone. What it is that when it's basically addiction. So I'll give the personal example. So I'm a single guy. This is a story from my life or from anyone's life. I'm a single guy. And yeah, I have my ups and downs. Um, and uh, uh, and I can handle most of the ups and downs. I got the coping strategies for when my self-confidence gets down as low as 60%, maybe 50%. I can handle that. And then I meet this person who offers me love and support and confidence. I mean, that's a lot of what I think I used to fall in love with, was that she loved me. That someone I thought was impressive loved me was a lot of what I was falling in love with. Um, Enough about me. Let's talk about you. What do you think of me? That kind of thing. And it was mutual. It's a mutual admiration society. Okay, so what happens now? I've got this subsidization. I got this person who, when my self confidence gets down to 60%, it doesn't feel like 60% anymore, because actually someone loves me and endorses me and is confident in me, and so her confidence is contagious. And I take it for granted, because no, I wouldn't want to admit that I'm dependent on her. I could have said that I wanted a partner for sex with more pride than if I said I wanted a partner for someone to boost my self-confidence. That feels tacky. So that's one of the reasons why I think that Mojonomics is a black market. So anyway, I got this partner now. She's right there for me. She loves me well and reliably, and I love her back. I do dedicated work to maintain her existence in my life. And then, so what is that? I have lost, I don't need as much self-generated confidence as I did, because I got this other one who's subsidizing me. That is, if I don't feel good about myself and I get down to 50%, 40%, I won't notice, because she's right there boosting me back up to 70%. And then suddenly she leaves. I took a walk this morning with a guy who has 3 kids under 7, with a wife and what seemed like a happy marriage. Very accomplished fellow. His wife is too. She was the moneymaker. And suddenly she simply says, "It's over. I'm getting a restraining order. I am taking the kids. I am going to fight you tooth and nail. I am cutting you off of finances." She worked in finance. He did not. So what happens then? That's a severe case. Not impossible. It can happen. I've been in. It's a real wedgie when that happens. I mean, you really suddenly you're in free fall. So what happens is suddenly you're not half the man you used to be. Why? Because you have fallen up into an addiction. What do I mean by fallen? You didn't need as much self-confidence, self-generated, as you did before you had a partner. Now that when you had a partner, you came to rely on them. And not only that, you came to rely on them without noticing that you were relying on them. And then suddenly they're gone, and suddenly you're not half the man you used to be. This is why I find the term rather partial to be so apt. That is, we become parts of larger wholes through a process of falling up into a commitment to something that we rely on. So I've given you other illustrations of this. I'll mention them again. They go without saying, but bear repeating. I'm addicted to vitamin C, just as you are. That is, I need external sources, even though other mammals don't. Why? Because we came in contact with fruit 35 million years ago and became dependent upon it. We lost the capacity to do for ourselves because we have this external source. The same damn thing as morphine. And once again, I said love is the question. What to get addicted to, what to love, whatever you want to call it, those are the interesting questions. I don't, so morphine is the same thing. I am producing morphine all the time. especially when I'm stressed. That's some of the buzz of eating hot peppers or jogging. Runner's high is basically morphine. And my body generates its own uh, pain reducers. Um, and then if I get addicted to an external source of it, my body down regulates its production of endorphins because I've got morphine coming in from the outside, and that's an addiction. Um, so falling up is what I'm talking about. And so let's see, isn't love simply a choice? What a wonderful question. Um, what do you think? Uh, I don't, I mean, it depends what you call choice. So there's this interesting question that I'll leave as a question for you, which is, do you have full control over your feelings? Are we actually kind of like robots? Yeah, okay, it is to you. Um, what do you mean by choice is really a question, and I'm going to pose it to you. I'm not going to answer that right now. What, how do you know that something is a choice? I have friends who work on the origins of life who think that life starts with choice. He's talking about choice before um, feelings or thoughts. He's talking about in the first uh, organism to ever exist. So, what do you mean by love is a choice? What is a choice? And I will keep talking while I wait for your answer to that because I'd love to hear what you think about that. I have my opinions, but I'm going to set them aside for the moment. I look for qualities that I choose. Okay. So you're not giving me a definition, but you're telling me what you do, which is that you look for character. So you're a guy who is, I guess, fairly rational or logical about this stuff. Um, and uh, and and so you are kind of rational and logical, and you look for someone who's got good character. Uh, Okay, honesty in your 60s. So now that you're 60, now that you're in your 60s, you're looking for someone who is honest. So you want someone who's completely honest to you. And if you find someone like that, you decide that they're of good character and you choose to be with them. Okay. My perspective is different from that. Um, and in ways that might be interesting. Married for 26 years. Okay, well there's a difference because you're in a partnership and you're maintaining it. And I'm guessing what we're saying is that back in your mid 40s, you found someone of good character who was honest, and that's why you've stayed married all these years. So I'll give you a different perspective. And it might be just that I'm a different kind of person from you, that or even a different kind of person from most people. So we could try something where we say, all right, most people are just logical about love. That's what love is, and it's just a logical choice. So it's almost like you do a rational calculation of the pros and cons, and you conclude that someone's of good character because they're honest. Now, I'm different from that. So I'm gonna actually explain some of that. And just tell me what you think of it, including it's totally fine if you say, well, yeah, it's because you're shallow or you have um, a, uh, 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 a need for self-confidence or whatever. Totally fine. Totally fine. So I don't think I have a full control. Thank you, my brother. Thank you for listening. Um, I don't assume I have full control over my feelings. So, for example, if someone says to me, angry? Why would I be angry? I have no rational reason to be angry. I can tell that they think about themselves differently from how I do. I do not assume that my feelings are rational, um, that I'm weighing pros and cons and simply making a logical choice the way I might about something I might be more neutral about. For example, suppose I'm not a car person at all. My son, who is an auto mechanic, has accused me of not being a car person, and he's quite right. But suppose that I was not a car person and I was simply looking for a car that was practical in my budget. I might be quite rational about a decision like that. It's a big decision and I want to make it right. And if I'm good at it, I might do that. Of course, um, that's not how most commerce works these days. There's all sorts of core products or identity project products. There's fetishizing. So though I'm not a car person, I spent much of my life as a musician with gear acquisition syndrome, which was what they call gas, which is I would kind of fetishize instruments as if I got this instrument, I would look good on stage and I would sound good and I would play good because because I've seen people play this instrument. That's how people buy fashion as well. So I don't assume I'm rational. I would say that I am somnipotent in controlling my feelings. I'm not omnipotent. I can't simply say, I don't want to have that feeling. That feeling is irrational. I choose not to. I call that robo envy. That is wishing I were a computer and that where other people were too. So, for example, if I said to one of my clients, come on, grow up, stop feeling that way. It's not logical to feel that way. That's not that would be a robo envy. That would be basically me saying, reprogram yourself to be the way that's more rational. I don't think of emotions that way. And part of that is because I come from, I'm studying the natural history of what emotions are. And how they emerge from the struggle for existence. So Freud made a big deal out of exactly that. He said, feelings have evolved to be representative of what's good for our survival and bad for our survival. He called this the pleasure principle. And then talked about how it's often incompatible with the reality principle, which is basically the superego stuff. So, all right, well, let me look at my addiction to my attraction to an addictive substance like morphine. Sure as hell feels good. And in for a penny, in for a pounding. I mean, once you get addicted to heroin or something like that, it's really hard to quit. If someone said to you, just drop it, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, you'd have these feelings that you could try to control, and you might succeed at controlling these urges to merge with heroin, but you don't have full control over them. You're somnipotent in controlling them. That's how it is for me. When I fell in love, actually, there's a Randy Newman line that I like from a poem, a song called "One to Love," the one you love. It starts with, you got to learn to get to know the one you love. To anticipate her every move, you better know exactly what she's thinking of. She may be hungry, but she won't say. You better get a burger in her right away, or else you're going to pay at the hands of the one you love. So he goes on in a verse later to say, once there was a man who fell in love with a lovely chest. He said it was her mind he loved, but he was blind like all the rest. 30 long years go by. Another chest catches his eye. He says, sorry, you're too late. I've already ruined my life. Now, Randy Newman, maybe oil and water Robert SVF, but he's actually quite resonant for me because I'm a romantic-cynic. I'm deeply romantic and deeply wary. And I think I can come back to your thing about honesty as the pure solution here. You're looking for someone who's honest. When I talk about that, I assume that I cannot manage my feelings if I deny having them. Same thing as with an alcoholic. If you can't admit that you have a problem with alcohol, you're not going to manage it. So I am, you could say, on the opposite end of the spectrum from the robo-envy dream that I am exclusively rational. That's why I do all this shameless stuff on here. I'm talking about my personal life, my vulnerabilities, the times in my life when I thought I fell in love with her character or her honesty. And maybe there was some of that, but there was also something about her butt and her breasts and her way of beaming beauty at me and the sense that I was being granted eternal life. So I have to pay attention to those feelings and not pretend I'm some rational person, exclusively rational person, even though many people would say I think too much. Yeah, I think a lot about my emotions. And the reason I do that is I don't feel like I got control over them, but I might have control over which ones I act upon if I admit that I have them. I can't manage what I don't admit to having. So So if your marriage is going great, congratulations on that. I am impressed by people who pull that off. I don't pull it off well. I'm glad that my lack of appetite finally caught up with my lack of aptitude. I'm not good at it. Can you imagine? I mean, I adore being married to me, but I would not want to impose this on anybody else. I'm too fucking much. I'm incredibly mouthy. And I got to the point in relationships where I could bite my tongue maybe 2 times, maybe 3, but I got buddies in partnerships who learned to bite their tongue 4, 5, 6 times. I have 3 independent friends who once said to me, "My wife could get any guy for a night. I'm the only guy who can handle her full time." And these are guys who were married to attractive women. And I could flip this whole story and talk about it from the female side. I don't know I'm not qualified to do that. I have no authority to do that. I'm imagining, but that's kind of what I try to do in my work. I don't want to take any of my stuff as credible. What I'm saying is, I try to put myself in other people's shoes and remember how they're like my choices. Okay, so she was a looker. Okay, you learned a lot. Okay, so I just caught you in something I want you to notice, because I am all about noticing our ambivalences and how we express them. So you said, isn't love simply trying to, let's see, isn't love simply a choice? And then you said, I made bad choices in my first marriage. She was a looker. Okay, so she was a looker. Um, Never mind what that might reflect on your current partnership. But and buddy, I know the feeling. And not only do I know it, but women know it too. I often hear from women who are disdainful of men's shallow lookism, but they have their own versions of it. It's not like they don't have these shallow standards. Uh, for example, a tendency for women to prefer men who are taller or have better means, that is, better resources. And the evolutionary psychology of all of this is quite interesting. That's how I got into evolutionary biology, was studying the evolutionary psychology mostly of who's zooming who. And I did it at a time when my marriage was falling apart and I was intensely bothered by sexual jealousy. She had gone off with another guy. I was, good luck Chuck, invariably. My girlfriends, my partners, when they left me, they were back in a partnership in no time. I did write the other day that many's the woman who tried casual sex with me and found it wanting. They're all partnered now. So, I mean, you hear the double entendre in there? That they tried sex with me and they didn't like it. But they also tried casual sex because they were kind of interested to see whether they could pull that off. This is one of the predicaments for women these days. They've got all sorts of hormones and social cultural stuff that makes them feel like monogamy and exclusivity is success and everything else is failure. And they are wrestling with that. I know lots of women who wish they didn't feel that way, that they could just make a rational choice to be with someone who was practical or to be with no one at all. I knew lots of women in my dating days who were not happy with how it had gone in their partnership. They were bucked off the horse many times, and they thought it'd be awfully nice if they could be more casual about it. Well, no, they couldn't. It was to a woman, they couldn't. I don't know anyone. I know one woman who I met in that state and had never partnered and was fine in that state. But it's what I'm saying is it's rare. It's a bad bet. A woman, I mean, this is my romantic, cynical stuff coming out again. A woman should trust a man who says he will love her forever as much as a man should trust a woman who says she's totally down for casual sex. That may be changing in the next few generations, but in my generation, that was an issue. You could say that, because my generation was one of those bridge generations between every marriage being forever. Divorce was really rare in my parents' and grandparents' days. And now, when I think we're still over the line, there's more breakups than marriages that succeed to last forever. So back to the thing about honesty. Let's see, that's what happened to me. That's why honesty became primary. I'm glad you brought us back to that. Um, yeah, me too, my brother. My one wife, I married for 16 and a half years, was a nurse. And I came out of it thinking, um, yeah, never again with someone with such talent in bedside manner. She was really good at affirming even when she wasn't feeling affirming, the way that a nurse would if she's attending to patients. Um, I need to know what she is thinking. Okay, but here's another way in which I think that what I'm proposing is more complicated than what you need, Robert. But it's still, I mean, change the channel if you don't want to hear it. But this is a framing that's different from the one I do hear from people who are managing to sustain their lives in a romantic account of what happened. You could say they said, "Well, my first marriage was bad, but then I found someone who was honest and good, and I didn't get distracted by looks, and now we're living well together in harmony." Um, and I get it. I get it. And so that's why I might not be good company because I am more of a romantic cynic. And to maintain a partnership, one has to lean on the romantic side. My best romantic partnerships were with partners I could wink with. So we would keep up appearances of complete devotion, but we'd also kind of wink. There was irony at the bottom of it, which is she knew that I had my ambivalences. I knew that she had her ambivalences. We were engaged in what you could call ambigamy. We wanted some of each other. Some of the other person was a little annoying. One way I think about this is that any partnership is really six loves at once. It's I love you, you love me, I love me, you love you, I love us, you love us. That's a lot to juggle. And I think, um, yeah. But anyway, back to the thing about honesty. Um, I think you really have to be honest to pull off any kind of intimate, sustained relationship. Because if you are caught in a lie that is threatening to the other person, that person's going to get wary. The whole thing's going to start to feel shaky like a house of cards. They can't afford to be in further than you are. So you have to be honest. At the same time, imagine this. So you imagine that your partner says, I love you. No, it doesn't say it, asks, I love you. It's like I said earlier, I think I love you is often a question. Do you still love me? And imagine if your answer was, well, to be perfectly honest, yeah, I love you today. Um, 2 days ago, I loved you like 90%. But yesterday, I had a conversation with this hot woman who seemed kind of enchanting to me, and got a little distracted by it. So today, I'm more like 17 or maybe I don't know, 50%. When I was 90 the other day, I'm expecting that my excitement about our marriage will come back, but I have to wait for these biochemicals to wear off because it was kind of exciting to talk to her yesterday. I think in any intimacy, you need to be way more honest and way more dishonest. I think that what marriage often ends up being is what we love about each other is that we can talk about anything, provided we don't. Okay, so that may be oil and water to the world you live in now, Robert, but that's a perspective from outside of it. Um, and you can kind of think of me like a gay person in that I know what's right for me. It's not I'm not selling it. I don't think that people need to live like me. I know plenty of people. I figure if I had a different life, one with less freedom to voice my honest opinion and pursue my careful, honest opinion, and if I had more need for a partner, um, I would be as committed to it as the next person who is partnered. I went through a post midlife crisis about 2.5 years ago, and I rued the day that I had given up partnership. It was partly driven, it was triggered by financial concerns. And suddenly, and I'm looking around and I see all these people, men and women, who had married into partnerships where there were double means. And I was thinking, you fool, you missed that. You indulged in not being partnered, and look at you now. And I still will get that feeling sometimes because, for example, if I came down with cancer or Parkinson's, I don't have a partner to look after me. On the other hand, I don't have a partner who I'd have to look after if she came down with that either. So it's in a way, what I'm interested in here is the impressively hard work of making sustained intimacy work without too much compromise to oneself. Philip Larkin is kind of a patron saint of this stuff for me. He's a poet. Let me see. I'm looking up one of his shorter poems. Here it is. So he is deeply romantic, like me. You may not know it because I talk on the other side of it. No, my heart is on fire. For example, it's a rare morning that I don't wake up from a dream, as I did this morning, in which I was falling in love again. The person isn't a specific person. It's the feeling of falling in love again, that rush, which is so vivid for all humans, that it's the heart of all of what goes on in lyrical music. Okay, so this is he's deeply romantic, but he's deeply wary, as am I. So he's a true ambigamist, deeply romantic, deeply wary. It's called counting. Thinking in terms of one is easily done. One room, one bed, one chair, one person there makes perfect sense. One set of wishes can be met, one coffin filled. But counting up to two is harder to do, for one must be denied before it's tried. Now, what does he mean by one must be denied? You have to kind of deny yourself. Well, you have to deny yourself some in order to be intimate with anyone. You have to make sacrifices. It was fascinating. When I would partner with women, they would say sometimes, there's something amiss in this partnership. I feel like I have to limit my behavior in order to make it work. And I'd say, what the fuck do you expect? This is a Venn diagram. We're both tucking in elbows to make room for each other. So there's that. Compromise to oneself is requisite for love. I sacrifice for the sake. That's right. No, that's exactly what we do in partnership. So what constraints and freedoms does love bring us? Rob, you're onto the question. Because the fascinating paradox is that from constraint comes freedom. Think about all the constraints you had to go through in order to learn language as a child. That's not shit that dogs have to go through. I mean, it takes years. It's one of the reasons why children have to stay children so long. We are a neotenous creature. Most animals get up and get to it, in a couple of minutes. But we take these 18 to 25 years or more these days. And part of that is just the clusterfuck that gets opened up, the freedom to imagine all sorts of things and having to deal with people who are imagining all sorts of things. The kinds of relationships where people start out, they feel the urge to splurge and surge to merge, and they are in it, and then someone has a new idea through language. They have a new idea and they drift off someplace else, and the other one says, what the heck? Or both of them do, as was the case in my marriage. My ex-wife and I now thank each other for giving each other the freedom to follow what? Follow the ideas that we got from all the constraints we put on ourselves. To be able to talk like this, to be able to think in words, is an incredible quantity of constraint. Think of the freedom I cultivate by practicing bass guitar an hour every night. I'm developing constraints. What am I doing? I'm constraining myself so I'm more free to solo when it's my turn, that kind of thing. So the relationship between constraints and freedoms is really interesting, um, and hard for people to grasp. Okay. Um, I thought you were here already. Oh no, I'm getting, you know what? I'm mixing up two people. I'm sorry. There's MZK Nip and MZK Nip. No, that's not the same person. Oh no, and then there's MSZUC1. Okay, you should be sorry. Yes, that's right. I assumed. Okay, and I was calling you Rob. I'm so sorry. It all comes from you having cryptic names. What am I called? Am I called Jeremy Sherman? No, I'm probably called Trying Beings. Anyway, yeah, you can see. So it's great to have you here, Mike, and it's great to have you here, Rob. And I'm delighted to have you. I love that you guys show up, that we can talk like this. I'm quite addicted to you by now. 1,000 mea culpas. I'm delighted that you feel addicted enough to me that you feel grubby if you don't show up on time. It is so silly. There's no end of me. The recordings are everywhere, and why you want me? It's another question. I love this Jewish joke. I've used it probably several times with you, which is, and I'm going to tell it the woman first version of it, the anti-misogynist version, but you can tell it either way. All of these jokes have that gender quality to it. Uh, uh, a woman walks in, a Jewish woman, Rachel walks in on her husband having sex with Rachel's best friend, Miriam. And Rachel says, Miriam, I have to, but you? Yeah, so I have to listen to me all day. I'm very lucky to like it. Um, but thank you for showing up, you guys. And I'm trying to feed you beauties, and that you probably aren't going to get anywhere else, but who knows? And I could suck and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, all right. So these interesting questions uh, about love, about romance. I would tie a bunch of things into a cluster that I would call romantic. It's the romantic cluster. So these are terms like love, kindness, empathy, charity, sympathy, um, the golden rule, all that sort of stuff. So, and also hope and optimism and all of those terms. And they're one side of the spectrum where you kind of put your thumb on the scale, and hope is if it's not just realism, then it's a thumb on the scale saying it's likely to turn out the way I hope it will. And it's definitely a for me kind of thing. Hope is always self oriented. I hope for what I want. That's why I'm saying that there's nothing more hopeful about one person than another. They just hope for different things. Um, uh, but what they all kind of imply is that if we relax our boundaries, if we get yin, then things will work out. If we turn the other cheek, Christianity is full of this kind of romance to the max, which is if you accommodate everyone, everybody will be accommodated, and there'll be reciprocation and harmony. If you give an inch, other people will give an inch back. And then we know the other side of that, which is a kind of a realism that recognizes that no, sometimes when you give an inch, they'll take a mile, as the Trumpists are doing. Um, uh, is the last, gets eraser duty. Jeff, thank you. That's right. And, and I'm glad you pulled into first place so you don't have to worry about the eraser duty. And the erasing is going to happen anyway because I talk too fast and it's too much stuff. And so if anybody showed up absent and then wrote a letter to me and said the most nauseating thing that teachers ever hear from students, which is, I missed class yesterday. I didn't show up to class yesterday. Did I miss anything? No, nothing. Right. Anyway, so where was I before you so rudely interrupted? Let's see. So the other side is realism. So we consider realism of pure virtue. I'm a realist is extremely popular. Say I'm a critical thinker. I'm a realist. I'm honest. I tell the truth. I seek the truth. I speak truth to power. All of that stuff. So the relationship between the two is interesting because some of the stuff I just said is romantic bullshit. If I said that I'm 100% realist 24/7, that's self-romanticizing bullshit. Um, uh, and then think that if you give them an inch, they'll think they're the ruler. Beautifully put. I've never heard that one before, and I'm going to use it. Thank you for that one. Um, uh, so hope and realism are kind of opposites. Hope puts the thumb on the scale in my favor. Realism does not. It's going to be more disappointing. It can be. What is the relationship between hope or wishful thinking and reality? They're, as I mentioned last time, I think they're orthogonal, which means they're uncorrelated. There are lots of real things that I would find delighting, and there are lots of real things that I would find terribly disappointing. There are lots of unrealistic things that I would find delighting, magical thinking. There's a lot of them that I would dread, the boogeyman. I just rewatched the 3-part series in season 11 of South Park about Imagination Land. It was published right after 2011. Oh, no, after 9/11, I think. It's astonishing. Those guys are fucking genius. It is so good. I recommend you go back and watch that 3-part series, Imagination Land. How did I get turned on to it? My students in my psych classes used to say, "You remind me of the mayor of Imagination Land." That, the big guy in the plaid suit and the top hat, the purple top hat, who sings that winding, meandering song, Imagination. Anyway, you got to see it. It's fabulous. It's some of the deepest philosophy you can get around. Get anywhere. I mean, I find those guys so profound. So they're dealing with this question about reality and imagination and whether imagination is real. And then they're also dealing with the way after 9/11, there was a fear that dreadful thinking would take over, that our imaginations would only go dark. So it's kind of a cautionary tale, brilliantly produced, and with this great running gag in it that Cartman expects his balls to be sucked by Kyle because they had made a bet that about whether leprechauns are real. Just got to see it. That's your homework assignment. If you don't do that by next time, I don't even know that I'll have anything left to say to you. I mean, you just got to do that if you haven't seen it recently. Okay, so the relationship between realism and romance is really interesting, and I think that you have to sacrifice some realism in order to make any kind of romantic commitment work for you. And let me take it out of the romantic realm of partnership. I'm sitting there having lunch with Dan Ellsberg, the guy who founded behavioral economics and the Pentagon Paper guy. He was a family friend. I lucked into years and years of us getting together once a month for dinner, for lunch, or something like that. He was by this time in his 70s or 80s. Had a fascinating relationship with romance and realism. And at one point, he's going on about how politicians are lying. And I said to him, Dan, yeah, but do you think you could possibly be a politician without lying? And he thought about it. I said, no, you're right. You're right. You have to lie. Why? Same reason you have to lie in partnership. And by the way, here's a homework assignment that might be interesting for Robert SVF. I've sent it out before. Look up a song called That's Love by Brad Paisley. It's an exquisite expression of this issue. That's love. You'll see. We all need a little. We all commit a little bit of perjury. I am the force. That's right. That's right. No, that's right. Because I've had all these weird interactions with people. So why do politicians have to lie? Well, because voters lie to themselves. We pretend we want them to be honest. We don't fucking want them to be honest. We want them to be convenient and reassuring. The appetite for pandering is huge. And therefore, the demand for flattery is going to be huge. And think of the challenge. So, if you're married, you got this one person you have got to keep feeling safe and confident in your partnership. Now, if you're a politician, you're not getting in bed with everybody. That'd be too much. Um, you'd run out of jism. But you are in bed with everybody more or less in that you've got to keep a whole lot of people trusting you enough to vote for you. It's a peripheral decision for most people. It's almost like spectator sport to vote in elections in the United States. This was one of the pathologies we ended up with, is that our government was reliable enough for long enough that people just took it for granted, um, and could actually start to treat it like spectator sports. But nonetheless, uh, you're in trouble. You're way out on a limb in a winner takes all, loser still pays situation, which is whether you are the winner or the loser in an election, you still pay the entire price for vying to win. So the stakes are incredibly high. Um, this is played out in a fascinating experiment, simple experiment, where let's say a teacher offers an auction on a $20 bill. And the way it works is whoever pays the most for the bill gets it. But the problem is that the one with the second highest bid um, has to pay the bid too. So winner takes all, loser still pays. And what happens in this, can you imagine? You get up to $20, that's the maximum you should pay for it. But someone just paid $19 for it that they're going to lose. And so really they're going to be the 21. And it goes on and on. If you want an explanation for why wars become so intractable, why both sides are in there trying to bleed the other dry, if you want an explanation for the Nazis after World War I, that's what you're looking at, is that the loser still pays. And that's a big thing in elections. So imagine this, you're a politician and you get to speak to different audiences, and you've got to make them all feel like you are there for them and only them. You are basically a philanderer with multiple families going on. And you kind of got to be, because your opponent is going to be, and they're going to win, and you will still pay. So just think of how hard it would be to be a politician. Someone once recommended that I should go into politics. Didn't seem feasible for so many reasons, including that that's not, first of all, it's not actually much of there's not much power in it. I did actually take it this far. At one point, I got a master's degree in public policy from Berkeley, 2 grueling years studying stuff that's really important to how I think now. But I came out of that thinking, no, I wasn't meant to be a wonk, and there are other people who want those jobs, so I don't have to worry about whether they're being filled. And now I go back to events at the public policy school, and I look at what gridlock those people are dealing with. It's rough. So, and when you're trying to be intimate with 200 to 330 million people in this country, really hard. Um, yeah. If you're Chumley, if you're interested in that, there's a book by an important uh, a behavioral economist named Robert Frank, and he wrote a book called The Darwin Economy. And it was all about exactly this. It was fascinating, all the different examples, including the one-upsmanship, keeping up with the Joneses and beating the Joneses, how these things run away like that, how you end up in these runaway situations. Um, and I'll tie that back into marriage, because I think I can make this connection. It's a little bit sketchy or broad or vague, but I bet there's a connection between that auction of the $20 bills and the way that commitment works in partnership. Um, yeah, let me just try this out. There's this important distinction between that you transition someone could go through, and you don't want to go through it in partnership if you care about the partnership. So here you are, two people standing independently, and then you fall towards each other, and you're leaning on each other, and you're praying that the other person that you're leaning on is not a sinkhole, like that guy I just described. Okay, so you both got to reassure each other because you're in for a penny, in for the whole thing. So you will tend to escalate your attempts to make it work because the cost of it not working, the sunk costs are intense. I mean, they can be millions of dollars, they can be years of your life. I got a buddy who has already spent 9 or 10 years trying to get out of a marriage from a person who is going to do anything to torture his ex. Okay, so and also the escalation in fights can be like that too. Because so you imagine divorce also has this quality. So once you start escalating, so there's this really interesting, delicate transition from how can I make it work to can I make it work? And ultimately, you get to what I call the Tonto. What is it? It's the Tonto tipping point, maybe. Based on that joke where the Lone Ranger and Tonto are surrounded by Indians, um, and the Lone Ranger says to Tonto, "What should we do about this?" And Tonto says, "What do you mean, we Kimosabi?" So there's this interesting transition from we, what are we going to do about our partnership, to what am I going to do, independent of the partnership. I in my last partnership, the oscillations back and forth between we and I we were just escalating to where we were processing all the time. It was intense. That was generally what happened in relationships for me because I am a hyper conscientious brute that I'm really paying attention to whether my partner is okay with me and would invite all sorts. I would say, "Are you okay with me? Are you okay with me?" That's the hyper conscientious part of me. And at the same time, I'm a brute. I'll say all sorts of things that you shouldn't say in partnership. So I would say that stuff, and pretty soon we're just talking about process all the time. In part because I really didn't belong in a relationship. I was busy thinking about ideas, and my partner figured out that the only way that she could keep my attention was to stir shit up. And so I finally ended it when she said, "Yeah, but what we should try, what or what are we going to do about?" And I said, "There is no more we. It's just me, and there's you." Um, so how you handle that, how you keep each other supported, and then at some point can drop out of it. So remember when I was talking earlier about the being totally honest in partnership and saying, "Well, I was at 90% last week and now I'm at 60% because I just had a conversation with someone kind of distracting." Man or woman could say that. So yeah, it's very dicey to express any ambivalence about the partnership within your partnership. It's just dicey because I think of the $20 bill bet. Because if it's just sunk costs, that's what we're talking about. You've got all these sunk costs that you can't get back. And so it's also, um, I have a rule of thumb, which is that people stay in marriage a year longer than they should or would for every child they have. I don't know that it's true. It's an impression I have. It's vague. I'm certainly not talking statistically. Um, but I think it's an interesting thing. The more invested you are in each other, the more difficult it is to break up. Okay, so let me see if there's anything else related to it. I guess I would love versus realism, or romance versus realism, hope versus realism. Um, Boundary setting is a lot of what that's about. Um, yeah, constraint awareness. Amen to that. I mean, that's really what I'm talking about. In a way, all my work is about constraint awareness, paying attention to the constraints that sustain me and the constraints that get in my way, and and the constraints that feel like they get in my way, and I bristle and bridle against them, and at the same time, I want to stay in them. Um, uh, and the freedoms I've got from constraint that I want to stay in, and the ones that I don't want to stay in. That is, what freedoms and constraints am I addicted to in good ways and bad ways? So here's a way to think about that. In general, what I end up doing is kind of floodlighting things that are typically spotlighted. So if I wanted a partner, or when I wanted a partner, I wanted a partner who rubbed me the right way, not the wrong way. I wanted a partner who um, petted me and reassured me and encouraged me forward, not one who got in my way and caused frictions and all that. But that's not actually the whole story. I want someone who rubs me the right way, not the wrong way. And I want someone who rubs me the wrong way, the right way, not the wrong way. I know that's a lot, but let me just play it out. So, what would it be to rub me the right way? Um, that is to be encouraging the right ways. Well, I would ideally want a partner who encouraged me to do what I aim to do for my growth. Um, I wouldn't want a partner who praises me and encourages me to do things that are tempting to me, but I don't want to be doing them. For example, if I was partnered to someone who was addicted to drugs, or what you sometimes see in partnerships is that a partner will enable another partner by encouraging them to eat a lot. Let's say one of them is overweight, and it becomes kind of a mutual admiration society, an affirmation society, encouraging them both to get fat. I'm looking up a song I wrote on this, a love song called Let's Get Fat. Uh, um, Okay. So I want someone who encourages me in the ways I want to grow and not in the ways I don't want to grow. Okay, there's that. Uh Here it is. Okay. Um and then I want someone who discourages me from doing the things I don't want to be doing. I would like to have constraints to support the constraints I'm developing in myself. I consider willpower a weenie. My willpower will say no maybe 3 times, maybe a 4th time, but then it'll say yes. That is, I'll say, "No, I won't do that thing. No, I won't do that thing. Yes, I will do it." So, I love to have, constraints that discourage me from doing what I already wanna do. I don't bring ice cream into the house. My rule is I can't change myself, but I can usually change my environment so it changes me. So I don't bring ice cream into the house. And I'm lucky to have addictions that don't make me go out in the middle of the night looking for them. You put them in another room and I don't pay attention to them as much. I'm lucky that way. Some addictions are, and some, you could say, some temperaments or whatever, appetites are too strong for that. I'm just lucky. I don't have addictions that bug me. I love my addictions. And I don't have many that I worry about, and the ones that I worry about, I mostly can keep at bay just by keeping them at bay, physically at bay. So I think of them as living lines. For example, the nicotine pouches. I've quit several times. I then will indulge in a pack and then I'll quit again. It's a living line. I push it over. I'm not terrified of it. If it was cigarettes, it'd be more dangerous. But so uh, I want a partner who thwarts me from doing what I don't want to be doing anymore. And I don't want a partner who thwarts me from doing what I want to do. So all of that is constraint awareness. And in general, I'm trying to set up my life, my environment, so that it encourages me to do what I want to do. And you're part of it. That's why I'm making this Valentine video to you, because me having to show up here and talk is just, I'm totally addicted to this as a way to continue to generate what I aim to be generating with myself in my remaining few years. So thank you for that. You are part of my constraints, that I have to show up here. I love that. I also get to witness that I would still be blathering like this even if the audience was smaller, because it goes up and down, and mostly down. I mean, I'll get these hits. By the way, I had 4 Facebook pages that were removed recently. They were simply suspended, and it took about 2 weeks for me to find out why. They were bringing in about 1 million views a month. That was impressive. I liked it. Um, I never got a straight answer out of Facebook about this. I did regenerate. I created a new page. But if I were to guess what it was that I was too mouthy to some Trumpists, and they complained about me and got me taken down. Um, why? Because they're setting firm boundaries and I'm setting boundaries back. So it was a constructive tension and constraint awareness, where if they're going to set boundaries, I'm going to set them right back. I don't believe in the golden rule because I think it's actually a paradox. If everybody accommodated everybody, nobody would have to accommodate anybody. But I pay more attention to it than I think most people do. What I mean, the challenges around it. So one version of it that intrigues me a lot is whatever you do unto me or I do unto you is fair game for the other to do on right back. That is, if you get to act like an authoritarian pig, denouncing me, I don't necessarily go there, but I could. It's free. You melded it. I think that's the word from card playing. If someone melds hearts, then others are. If you're forced to put down a heart, then everybody else is inclined that way. Let me read you this love song called "Let's Get Fat," because it is one of the ultimate comforts in some partnerships, especially in the United States where we eat like we do, which is that at some point you simply relax. You're no longer busy trying to keep up the cuteness. One of the interesting paradoxes of life is that two of our favorite activities is are having sex with hot, fit people and eating a lot. And they're kind of at cross purposes. This is quite the bind, the way we're intertwined. We both love hot bod sexing. So find it very vexing that our other greatest pleasure is eating without measure. And if we're being frank, between sausage fests and franks, eating's more immediate, reliable, expedient. I kind of hate admitting it. Food's more fun than hitting it. Our hot bod days are waning, and no, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying maybe we should admit our choice is free food. Let's get our sex from porno, order pizza from DiGiorno, shut eyes, hold pudgy hands, retire our hot sex glands. I wonder how it sounds to say yes to extra pounds. I'm glad we had this chat. What I'm saying is let's get fat. Um, I never got to that point in a partnership. Um, there were many reasons I retired from it. Some is that I think it's extremely challenging for anybody. I don't blame any of my partners. None of them were narcissists. I just think intimacy will tend to bring out sides of people that, if there's tension in intimacy that doesn't resolve into just tucking in your elbows and making room for each other in the kennel of love, as you're caged together, then there's a tendency to escalate, and it spun out for me a lot. But also there were other things. One is that I actually pay too much attention to to I I am really troubled by a woman's disappointment in me. An attractive woman's disappointment to me, I consider it extremely Oedipal. That is, I'm assuming I'm a poster child for the Oedipal complex. Uh, my mom was attractive. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the competition among guys. My father, my brothers, and me. It was a stiff competition, and I was kind of obsessed with whether my mother was disappointed in me. And she was a very nurturing soul. She was a free space on the bingo board. She provided unconditional love, which I consider to be a fiction, but she provided it convincingly to me. And so there's a way in which I am actually too sensitive to women's disappointment in me to be partnered successfully. And the other was that I never quite got over my shallow lookishness. Um, and had to admit it to myself that it wasn't okay. It wasn't okay to be out there so easily convinced by something so irrelevant to the long-term sustainability of the partnership. The model was a perfect example of this. I mean, she was my 17-year-old wet dream, totally gorgeous. And we were intensely incompatible in how we negotiated the incompatibilities. We were water and oil. She's a born again Christian now. I mean, we were just radically different. So it was quite the brain fry. Um, no, I don't. I have no business in that terrain because I just don't qualify appropriate for it. And for me to, let's say, fall in love, thinking for the mutual admiration society, all that stuff I dream about in the middle in the early morning. I know I couldn't stick with it. I know that I wouldn't be able to pull it off, and that's as unkind to a woman as using a woman as a beard. There's a gay person who uses a woman as a prop to make himself look straight. Unconscionable, totally unfair. So no, I withdraw for those and many other reasons, including that um, I'm really happy playing with ideas in my short remaining years, and because I also had my day in the sun. I had a great run, so I don't feel like I was exiled. And so none of this is I don't think there's any virtue in what I'm doing. I'm just describing a place I ended up. Um, and it does echo something that a poem that I like enough from Philip Larkin that I'm going to recite it for you here. It's called Places, Loved Ones. You've probably heard it from me before. No, I have never found a place where I could say, this is my proper ground, here shall I stay, nor found that special one who had an instant claim on everything I own, down to my name. To find such seems to prove you want no say in where you live and whom you love. You ask them to bear you off irrevocably, so it's not your fault. Should the town turn dreary, the girl adult. But having missed them, you're bound nonetheless to act like what you settled for mashed you, and wiser to keep away from thinking you still might trace, uncalled for to this day, your person, your place. So I love the tension in it. He's at the end, he's saying, it's still wise to stay away from thinking you still might trace, uncalled for, your person, your place. So he's saying he's doubling down on his message. He never found them. To find such seems to prove that you want to surrender your life into something. He mentions the girl adult. It could be a man adult. It could be the cult adult. We're talking about falling into a person, a place, a lifestyle brand, MAGA, whatever the fuck, that kind of thing where you surrender yourself into something almost like, I don't know what I want. I guess I'll have what they're having, sort of a thing. But he says, you're bound nonetheless to act like what you settled for mashed you. Mashed you. So there is something about being single, at least at first, where if you're the third wheeled or the odd cog or not partnered, this kept me looking for partnership longer than it should. The status of being partnered as compared to exile, the wallflower, the one who can't get a partner, the one who's too feral to be domesticated. That turned out to be a big driver for me in partnership. I would go to academic meetings with my colleagues and they were all partnered and I wasn't. When I wasn't, I felt like I wasn't proving my domesticatability, that I didn't manage to figure out how to tuck in my elbows. One woman who I was partnered with both complained and admired that I was feral, that I was too feral. Just like too undomesticated. And my response to her was, I'm not really feral. I'm just domesticated to other things. And here I come full circle to the question of what addictions you want, how to set up the constraints, what I call how to be a selectrician. So you select the selective pressures you're under, the or else's, the constraints, all of those. So you wire them up for yourself so you grow yourself as effectively as possible. And I cannot speak to whether the stuff I'm feeding you is pure beauties or pure shit. I do not get to talk about whether or not. I mean, I have my opinions about it, but don't don't take my word on it at all. All I can tell you is I feel fucking lucky to have wired up the constraints, the love slash addictions in my life so that I am growing in directions I want. They could all be the wrong direction. It could all turn out that everything I've thought, like all the intellectual heroes in my life who thought they were onto something, and then it gets overturned one after another. I mean, you cannot play in the research I do without a decent chance that you will have spent your entire life barking up the wrong tree. So I'm not speaking to whether my stuff is valuable, though I got to tell you, it's fucking genius, everything I say. But I'm saying that jokingly. But what I'm saying is, boy, do I love the addictions. And boy, do I, what I wish for you on Valentine's Day is that you wire up your addictions, your grooves for your satisfaction. And there are limits on how much I would argue for that. For example, I know that Pam Bondi has wired up her addictions to her satisfaction. So there's a whole other question about whether or not it's a good thing, whether it's disastrous. I'll give you an example. I do a lot of work about the addiction to religion and spirituality. I don't see a difference between religion and spirituality or dualism of any sort, where you imagine there's some kind of supernatural wild card, trump card that's on your side. I find it fascinating, natural, deeply human, and probably the source of our extinction. Is everybody getting that kind of tribal where they claim to have found the answer? It's extremely dangerous. And I end up talking way more about how it grooms for things like MAGA. And I lose lots of subscribers because I am touching an area that's inviolate to them. So you probably know the quantity of MAGA supporters, no, anti-Trumpists who are citing Christ and how unchristian they are. And I'm more likely to say, no, actually, they were groomed for this by Christianity. That Christ was actually not good advice. It was actually extremely shallow. Bless his pointed head, it served its functions back then, but no, it's not good advice. It's half-witted advice. This idea of always turning each other cheek or loving your neighbor all the time or all of that, or making those sacrifices, like if everybody sacrificed, it's the new age stuff. And there was a time when I bought it wholeheartedly. When I was a elected elder on a commune, it was all love is the answer. So I really got to see what that was like. But you think that these people are actually lurching into those movements because they actually want to make all those sacrifices? No, they're doing it for the bragging rights. I cannot. So what I'm saying is I could be promoting a deadly disillusionment. I have no evidence. I have very little evidence that humans can live sustainably without some noble lie commonly shared, like Christianity or Nazism or Stalinism. I mean, so where's my evidence in support of the possibility that we could actually live without that stuff? There's a kind of pragmatism that we see in a lot of Europe, which is kind of burnt out on that stuff. But other than that, we don't see a whole lot of evidence for it. China is an interesting case of it, mainland China, because when I was there for 4 weeks, I didn't meet anybody I met one person who was actually a Christian. And they had a good relationship with Maoism or communism, which is, we don't actually think it has any bearing on life. We use it for relief, and it's kind of the commonly held tradition. It's like Santa Claus, is basically what they said. And I wish that Christians could treat Christ more like Santa Claus, because he makes sense for kids. Good thing to be sentimental about, but no, the teachings are naive. And I think that's some of their power, is that no one actually could attain a Christ-like state. We think of Mother Teresa or any of the saints as doing so. I don't buy it. I think Christopher Hitchens was onto important themes in the problems with Mother Teresa, or the Dalai Lama has the same issues for me. But so that's a case where, no, I could end up being really bad for the world. I'm still placing my bets and still keeping track of the fact that they could be the wrong bets, the exactly wrong bets. We were having a conversation, Terry and I, in the group yesterday about vervet monkeys. and their different calls and how they ended up evolving those calls. So they have a call for when a eagle is flying above and they have to tuck into the tree and or even get on the ground close to it, or when a leopard is coming along, in which case they have to climb up into the tree and high out on the limbs because the leopard could climb out there, but not on the finest limbs. Those are opposite moves. And so it really matters that you get the calls right. The calls are decidedly distinct. How they evolved is an interesting thing. But you could say that's kind of a fundamental driver in all of my work, and it's how my work started. So I'll end with this because I think it's been a driver for me the longest time. So as I've mentioned gingerly a few times, my firstborn son and I didn't work out well. And he might be doing better these days, but he wasn't doing well for a long time. And we struggled with it a lot. I'm no longer in contact with him. I would be happy to be if he talked to me adult to adult, but he mostly talks to me child, spoiled brat to parent, or parent teaching me how I've ruined his life. But I was obsessed with making it work for him when he was growing up. On the commune where he was born, the rule was your number one job is you got to raise a kid who doesn't grow up to be an asshole. And I had a kid who had, but perhaps, a mental illness that didn't evoke sympathy in those around him. He was nasty to people. He was hard company for everybody, especially for us, in part because it also reflected on us. A lot of my clients these days are people who are dealing with kids in one state or another like this, and some of my clients are the kids themselves. But what happened to me one night was I'm lying in bed, as usual, wondering what I should do about the situation with him. And I realized that I was in a bind. It was a two-way bind at the time, and later I realized it was actually a three-way bind. I couldn't tell whether he was indulgent or handicapped. And what you do when you're in with a child who's indulgent is you push them, you constrain them. And what you do with a child who's handicapped is you accommodate them. So what I coined the term acids. This was something that was eating at me. Ambiguous cues, that it's like cues I was getting off of him. I couldn't tell whether he was indulgent or handicapped. Incompatible do's. What you do with someone who is handicapped is the opposite of what you do with someone who is indulgent. And then later on, I realized that there was a third part of it, which is that he could have been just from a different culture. I learned this from him because he would play a shell game with me where whether no matter what I was doing, it was like treating him like he was handicapped. Shame on me if I was treating him like he was indulgent. Shame on me. And then the third one was that I just closed-minded because he was actually marching to a different drummer, and I was unwilling to deal with that. But anyway, that's what got me interested in tough judgment calls. That's what got me motivated to go get a PhD in evolutionary epistemology, which is basically decision psychology, choice psychology, though I wouldn't say we make conscious choices mostly. Not at all, I wouldn't say so. So that issue and how, for example, it plays out for the vervet monkeys, how it plays out in partnership, whether something is if someone's rubbing you the right way, the wrong way. So I'll end with just this. This is a kind of maturing that I am glad to be following out. To me, it's a kind of maturing. Hard left, hard right, hard center, hard choices. Hard left is love is the answer. And you go out and you try that and you get burnt. And then you say, okay, well, toughness is the answer. That's hard right. And then you get burnt doing that because it's not the answer. So you say tough love is the answer. That's hard left, hard right, hard center. Hard center is tough love is the answer. There's a notch right in the middle where you be equally tough and equally loving. And then hard choices is no, tough love is the question. Where to be tough and where to be loving, which was a real struggle with my kid. And I wouldn't say I succeed. I agree with him on that. He says that I was a total failure and that I ruined his life. And all I can say is it didn't work. So there was actually a way where I got to, sorry, the last little bit about this was can't, won't, shouldn't, the four options for how to interpret an incompatibility. Handicapped is can't. He can't help it. Won't is he could help it, but he's indulgent and won't help it. Shouldn't is he's marched into a different drummer. Just live separately from him. Don't push him. Don't accommodate him. Just separate. And then the fourth choice is didn't. There's a consolation of thoroughness from me having tried all those different things with my son and none of them working. And it's not his fault. I'm not going to blame him for it. It's fine that he blames me for it at this point. I mean, it wasn't fine when he was sending me death threats, but all I know is that it didn't work. Whatever combination of accommodating him because he can't change, pushing him because he won't change, giving him space because he shouldn't change, all I can say is he didn't. And there are plenty of relationships like that where I just say, we tried, bless the folk who come and go. But bless you for coming here. Thank you. This was very fun. For me, I live in these ideas. I don't even prepare for this. And that's kind of what I'm talking about, is there's a way in which if you live in this stuff long enough, you gain a kind of pattern fluency. Again, I'm not speaking about whether my patterns are right, but I'm solving for pattern. And I love that you're here with me, engaged in that. I think it's a wonderful addiction. All right. It's a good diction, not a bad diction. All right. All right. See you next time. And by the way, tomorrow, as usual, I'm just going to say this last little thing. We're having our meeting about how to engage with people there's no talking to, how to touch or poke the touchy untouchables. 9 o'clock here. And also, to Rob's point last time, next Sunday, we will have this meeting live at that same address at 11 o'clock. And so, yeah, we'll just meet there and we'll jam and you'll be able to blab and say, Jeremy, you ignorant slut. And we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. I love you guys. Happy Valentine's Day. Yes, my brother, sister, sibling, nebulous void.